everybody, and thank you for attending today's Empower People course. We want to make sure to include all the people because today is practicing inclusion in the workplace. So we better practice what we preach. And our instructor today is Dr. Christine Fuselier. She is the expert on this topic. And Christine, if you could go to the next slide so everyone could say the oath with me, that'd be fantastic. If everyone could repeat after me. I, Tiffany Joy Green, do solemnly swear to accept the lifelong obligation to hone my superhero powers and apply those superhero powers to the good of the people I serve. I will promote and add to the ongoing success of Empower People, its members, and the people, organizations, and communities it serves. I will help prepare the next generation of superheroes. I am driven to be a positive change agent for those I serve and interact with. As I like to do, hands on the hips, look up to the sky, a superhero pose, and you will feel empowered, at least for the next hour. And if you need another dose, do it again.
Do it again. Yes, indeed.
If you got to hold it all day, if that's one of those days, just hold it all day. Do it as long as you need. So I pass the baton over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me. And this is very near and dear to my heart about inclusion. We want to talk about what that looks like in a workplace. So here's some of the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is inclusion, what does that look like, and talk about a business case for it. We'll see how do we recognize it, what barriers we have to that, and what the leadership role is in this space. So I'm going to ask that you engage as much as possible. I know it's only a few of us, but engage and ask questions and things of that nature. A little bit about me is I have a doctorate in organizational leadership. I work a lot with leaders in this space as they look at performance in their organizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm certified in several different behavioral certifications, watching how we behave. And I am currently the division director at HCA for Cultures and Values. I used to be a dean at Bryan and Stratton College, and I also own a leadership consulting firm where, again, we work with leaders to make sure that they are being the best that they can be and they are able to grow additional leaders in their organization. So let's get right into it. Inclusion. So when we look at inclusion, that is a behavior. It's not just a warm, fuzzy word, but it is a behavior that we want our leaders and our peers to show. And we want to make sure we create an inclusive environment by doing what? Recognizing, valuing, and leveraging different perspectives and backgrounds to drive results. So when you hear that, what does that say to you? Like, I want to leverage different perspectives and backgrounds. What is that for you in the audience? What does that mean to you? Could it mean I want different people, different cultures, different generations, which is huge in our workplace today? These are all the different things, but it's a behavior. It's how we value, how we recognize, and we use those differences to make sure we get the results that we have. And many people, it's like, well, I don't know if I necessarily need that. Let's look at the business case for it. The business case is retention. Retention is just as important as recruitment because we can get someone in the door with all the warm and fuzzy words, and we are very inclusive and we value, but when they get in the door, how are we treating them to retain them, to make sure that they want to stay? And it also needs to feel welcome. How many people, think about a time when you went somewhere, you just didn't feel like they wanted you there. Not a good feeling, right? You're like, I don't like the way that feels. People are dismissive. They ignore you. But you want to make sure that a culture, organizational culture and climate has to be welcoming. Sometimes you have what they call microaggressions or pigeonholing, which they have the adverse effects because if someone feels that they are being targeted, they're mistreated, their things are being said about them, would they stay? Would you stay? No, we wouldn't stay. And then making sure our voices are respected, heard, and sometimes when it makes sense, incorporate it. So sometimes we can go, we may have something we want to share with leadership, and they may not even listen to us. Like we're not doing that, or they just put the brakes on immediately. But even though if you have an environment where they listen to you, they hear what you're saying, if they're able to incorporate it, that's great. Sometimes they're not, but we're not looking for always being like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. At least hear them out, right? Because sometimes people bring a different perspective that we may not even see coming, right? And then the biggest business case for this is to make sure that anytime we have inclusion, there's a progressive understanding of the impact to that. So we have industries who are progressive when it comes to recruitment, but inclusivity remains a major challenge in organization. And let me ask you why? Why do you guys think that happens? When we get you in the door, but we really don't include you. It's kind of like inviting somebody to the party and you don't ask them to dance. Have you guys heard that before? And they're just standing against the wall watching the other people dance. So I don't know if we've ever been to that before, but yeah, right? So let's also look at recognizing what inclusivity looks like. It begins with the individual. So we have to understand that how do we make people feel welcome? How do we engage with people? If we are not doing it, then that's for our first step. Then you engage with them, right? You're talking to them. You kind of connect with them. You're bringing them in. And it's not a one size fits all. Engagement is very individualized. Like some people you have to engage with them different ways. So you think about, am I being engaging? Am I being intentional about how I'm being engaging? And then you look at what opportunities you have or you can offer. So based on including people, there may be opportunity for you to bring somebody into, like for a speaking engagement. There may be an opportunity for you to have someone help on a project, right? So that's a way to engage people. And even though they may have different opinions and views, the differences is what creates the opportunity for us to be a lot better. And then people feel and share how they are respected and valued. So when you walk into an organization where inclusivity is part of the culture, people are sharing it. They are telling you that here I feel like I'm valued. Here I feel like I'm respected. And that often shows up in like surveys. Like many organizations do employee surveys to kind of see where the employees are. And this is the space where you will see that kind of really highlighted. And then it also looks like all voices are respected, heard, and incorporated again, right? And then we make sure that inclusion can occur only again with progressive understanding of the impact that it has. This is what it looks like when you recognize it. When you walk into an organization, you can definitely feel it, or not. Here are some barriers that creates to preventing inclusivity. And if you guys look at this, even in the chat, say, what does any of these resonate? Have you seen this? Have you experienced this? Any of these in this box? So you have discrimination, you have lack of flexibility, unconscious bias. That's a huge one that creeps in group, out group. I like to call that being cliquish, the organizational culture. Nobody's compliant. Nobody's holding anyone's accountable. Behavior is allowed. And then there's like, what does that look like for an organization? Are we bringing in inclusivity based on the multicultural people we have in our organization? Are we doing that? Sometimes bullying and harassing. That's huge. And it's amazing how you see that in organizations, top organizations. The bullying and harassing, that's definitely a way for someone to leave. Like, would you go anywhere where someone's bullying you? Like, we had to deal with it at school, right? But you don't have to deal with it at work, right? So these are some things. Does any of this resonate with you all? Yes, no, maybe. Yep.
I see that Marcus said culture, yes, bias, groups, or cliques.
Yes, yeah. And that click thing, that does also go high up. You see clicks even at the C-suite, which is amazing to see. So let's look at how leaders, what roles do leaders have in this space? It needs to make direct and conscious choices that increase diversity, which will enhance the organizational performance. And why is that important? So think of a homogeneous organization. Everybody looks alike, everybody talks alike, everybody dresses alike. It's kind of like, I always use an analogy, like if someone gave you a hammer and a nail and they said, put the nail in the wall, and you would only think, oh, the only way you can do that is with a hammer. But is that the only way you can put a nail in the wall? You can use other things, right? Use a shoe, you can use a brick, you can use a book. It depends on, but you definitely can think of other ways to do things.
A stapler.
Yeah, the stapler, my favorite. Sometimes you take your phone, like tap, tap, but you definitely have to have people who think differently. Diversity of thought is huge, right? If we all think the same, we will never grow, right? So a prime example is our favorite Blockbuster. Blockbuster had a homogeneous organization. They thought the same. So when Netflix came around, at first it was Redbox. So they were like, we don't want to do any mailing service. That doesn't make sense. Nobody's going to do that. And then slowly they crept in. But a lot of people don't know is with Netflix went to Blockbuster because they had did it, I want to say 2, maybe 3 years, and they weren't making the money they thought they were making. So they went to Blockbuster to sell it to them. They were like, yeah, no. And guess what? Netflix, Blockbuster died because diversity of thought, right? And then leadership should start the conversation to develop stories of what inclusion means to them. Like ask the people who work with you and for you, what does that mean to be inclusive? What does that mean to you? So leaders' responsibility is have the hard conversation, because sometimes it is a little difficult, especially if you're in an organization that says never happened before, or you don't have the buy-in, have the hard conversation. And then leaders need to recognize that to increase inclusion, they need to drive change in structures and processes and allocate resources to that change. What does that look like? It could be something as simple as your application process. Like I've done exercises with organizations where we looked at the wording, and sometimes the wording automatically makes people feel excluded. Oh, that organization doesn't want me. Look at how is your wording in your application. What about the interview process? Like, is that a place where people come and feel like they're included or they can be included, right? So there are different ways that we can look at structures and processes within the organization to see, is this speaking inclusion? Here's some other practices. So research shows us that employees scores their managers low in those behaviors which help people foster inclusion. So look at the behaviors: engaging behavior, developmental behaviors. So there's 2 that we're looking at. Hearing their concerns and ideas and opinions, appreciating their culture, empowering them. Those are engaging behaviors. Developing behavior is finding out what their talents are, coaching them to performance and developing them for promotion. So you look at the different ways that we engage with our employees. And if people don't do that, guess what? When the engagement survey or the performance survey or the employee survey comes out, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be rated low. Would you rate someone high if they were dismissive, if they didn't talk about, and they didn't show any appreciation, and they didn't talk about growth within the organization? Are these people that we would rate high? More than likely not. And then let's look at practicing inclusive leadership in this space. So you have, in many organizations, what they do is they have formal or informal employee networks. Sometimes they're called affinity groups, sometimes they're called ERGs. And look at what does that do for an organization? So if you come into an organization and you're new, you really don't know the lay of the land, you don't know the unspoken rules. Sometimes, like I'll use the military network or veterans network, for example. Sometimes our veterans may come out of military life, and sometimes they are struggling to adapt to civilian workplace. because those are totally different leadership styles. So if a military network group or a veterans network group was in place, then they could join that. Those are people who have the same military experiences that they have. They could talk to them about how do I acclimate to this new environment. And it gives them another support, a layer of support, a resource that they have so as they navigate through their career in the organization. So the power of an employee network group is to make sure that people have another layer of support and another resource to help them navigate. And then, like I said, surveys and feedback, it'll show up there, especially when they're anonymous. The survey will show up, like they don't feel like they belong, they don't feel like they're being included, that kind of thing. And then in the performance review. So you may have managers who, as leaders, we often see that they are not bringing their team in. They are not coaching, developing, doing all the things to engage their team. That will show up in their performance review. And then the biggest thing is, I don't know if you guys realize, like that's like an ear to listen. The people will tell you what they want. The people will tell you what they need. They will tell you if they feel belonged or not, if we're listening, right? So let's look at what we have in conclusion. We want our workforce looks much like this, very much like this, right? And it's going to continue to do that. The United States is probably the biggest melting pot in any other country, and it's continuing to get that way. So we want to make sure that our workforce reflects how our world is changing, because it's going to continue to change, right? And inclusion in our behavior can also help us bring value to the organization, that we respect individuals' differences and the benefits that they bring to the workplace. And also if we create a competitive edge. So, and statistically, this has shown up several times, that more diverse and inclusive organizations, they're more profitable, they have a bigger competitive edge. And then also you want to make sure that people feel safe in your organization. And when you exclude, and exclude can look like a lot of different things. It could be so much as you don't include people in conversations, like you have these sidebars or you whispering. Like those are things that can exclude people from feeling like they belong in an organization. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do now, if you don't mind, is I am going to close out our Facebook Live, because in order to take part in the Q&A, you have to be an Empower People member, and the way to join is the link is in the comments, so feel free to do that. But thank you to everybody in Facebook land. Hope to see you on the flip side. I'm bringing the oldie but the goodie back.
The flip side.